Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pixel, and today on the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel we're going to be taking a look at The Last of Us Part 1 running on our SAPPHIRE Pulse RX 7900 XT graphics card. As always, all the footage in this video was recorded using AMD Relive, and the performance overlay was provided by Rivertuner Statistics Server. Now normally we'd jump right into some gameplay, but before we do that, I want to let you all know that from now until the 15th of April 2023, you'll be able to get your hands on a free copy of The Last of Us Part 1 when picking up one of our eligible Sapphire Nitro Plus or Pulse branded AMD Radeon graphics cards from one of our many participating retailers. Down in the description to this video, I'm going to leave a link to a Sapphire Nation article which has got all the relevant details, but with all that said, let's finally jump into some gameplay. As with many of the once exclusive Sony titles, The Last of Us Part 1 is incredibly impressive in terms of its level of detail and overall production values. The game has a level of polish that is very rarely seen these days outside of studios such as Rockstar and Remedy. Not only does the game look great visually, but it also has many elements that all interact with each other in a realistic fashion, which really amps up the feeling of believability. Great animation work, cinematography, and even game design all play their own part, and I honestly believe the results speak for themselves. All the footage that you have been watching has been recorded at the game's ultra quality preset at a 4K resolution alongside FSR2 set to quality mode. Whilst it's most likely possible to configure the settings in order to achieve a native 4K 60fps, I think the overall presentation is already soft to the point where going for native really isn't going to make a massive difference. Visually speaking, the game has got this sort of gamey look laid on top of extreme realism, and what I mean by this is that despite being highly detailed and well animated, there's still this undeniable stylized look to everything, and I'm not talking about by accident either. Whilst this approach goes a fair way to avoiding the uncanny valley, I can't help but feel like it leads some people to thinking the game is a little bit dated, which in turn results in some unrealistic expectations around performance. You see, when you start taking into consideration all the subtle little graphical tricks and details at play, I have to admit that I'm actually fairly impressed that the game manages to run as well as it does, at least in terms of its GPU requirements, outside of VRAM, which we're going to get onto soon. I suppose what I'm getting at here is that sometimes it's far too easy to base a game's performance expectations on its art style rather than what's actually going on under the hood. I have no doubt that if Naughty Dog wanted to, they could have most likely gone with a more realistic look and for the most part pulled it off. The problem is, as you increase realism, you also increase the likelihood of things looking just a little bit off, mainly due to face planting straight into the uncanny valley. Very few games these days make me stop in my tracks just to admire the details, and yet, The Last of Us managed to do that to me regularly. Though it's also probable that having some sort of experience in assessing these sorts of graphical details ends up colouring my appreciation. For instance, why would the average gamer be impressed by the fact that a mattress realistically compresses, or that these individual hair strands are movable? Honestly, a lot of what I'm saying here really comes down to expectations versus reality. Gamers should 100% take as much as possible for granted, and shouldn't have to appreciate individual details based on how hard they are to implement. However, when it comes down to evaluating performance and effort, this sort of thing is extremely relevant, though the whole debate around whether or not subtle little details are worth the cost is still extremely valid. With all that said, as much as I'm gushing praise right now, there's no ignoring the fact that a fair number of users have been running into a few issues, and these range from random crashing and graphical bugs, right down to lower than expected performance due to VRAM limitations. Thankfully though, since AMD GPUs tend to have access to more VRAM when compared to their Green Team equivalents, VRAM limitations appear to be much less of a problem, provided that you're running reasonable in-game settings. On our Pulse 7900 XT, for example, I've had the game maxed out at both a native 4K and the 4K FSR2 quality mode that you're currently seeing, with no VRAM related issues whatsoever. When it comes to the crashing, that's not something that I've experienced personally, though reading up online it appears that it was the Nvidia 3000 series that was suffering the most, but even that apparently was recently addressed via a hotfix a few days ago. The biggest issue for me personally is the jitter that you get when moving the camera around with the mouse once above 60fps. This is a problem that was also in Uncharted 4 on the PC, so I'm kind of worried it's going to be around for a little while longer. However, thankfully, when you cap your frame rate to 60 or when you're playing with a controller, this doesn't seem to be a problem, so there are at least workarounds. Finally, a quick word on the heavy CPU performance requirements. Personally, I've done all my testing on the Ryzen 7 5800X, so I can't really comment on the weaker CPUs, but What I can tell you is that the game is incredibly heavy in terms of its utilization, and so I can very easily imagine that weaker chips are likely to run into some limitations. Obviously, I can't really comment on things that I've not personally experienced, but I did want to give it a mention. Overall, I have to admit that my time with The Last of Us on PC has been extremely positive. I believe that Sony has some sort of monopoly on the big budget AAA single player experiences, so it's nice to finally have access to a decent chunk of them here on PC. Obviously, there's still a few problems that need addressing, but based on what we're hearing from Naughty Dog themselves, they're taking these issues extremely seriously and are working hard on making improvements. The Last of Us is a franchise that I've had my eye on for quite some time, but as a PC-only gamer, I've not had the opportunity to jump in and give one of the games a try. Hopefully though, as I get a few days over the Easter holidays, I'm going to be able to sit down and play the game from start to finish, because from what I've already played so far, it really seems to scratch that itch that I've got for more mature, big budget single player experiences. With all that said though, that is once again going to be me done for today, so thank you so much for stopping by and watching. If you're in the market for a new graphics card, be sure to check out the offer I mentioned at the start of this video by checking out the link in the description. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you've not done already so you'll never miss out on one of our future uploads. If you've got any questions, suggestions or feedback, you can let me know in the comment section down below. But for now, from myself and everybody here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, thank you so much for stopping by, and until next time, we'll catch you later, bye bye.